Hi there, this is Sean Higgins again with another book review. Now, before I say anything else, I want to thank Meg Hendricks. She's Meg's Reviews on YouTube. She's given me an invaluable amount of help with getting this set up. So, what what I plan on doing, I'm going to see how much interest I have and how much how much enthusiasm that I have stays. But I was thinking of doing a book review of some of the children's mystery books that I read as a child. I was gonna do like one series and then do them in order till I finished it and then start the next series. But I realized that might take forever. So instead, I was thinking I'm gonna take 4 series and I'm going to do them. Maybe once a week, maybe not, but if I do them once a week, let's say, I can do one book from each series a month. So weekly, let's say I would do series 1, week 1, then series 2, week 2, series 3, week 3, series 4, week 4, and do the first book in each, and then the second, and so forth. I'm still a little shaky on what I'm gonna do with that. But for now, at least, I'm gonna do the Bobbsey twins, and I know I mentioned before that I like the latter 2 series from the 1980s. So let me just give you a little brief summary of the Bobbsey twins. It was a book series that started out in 1904, so over 100 years ago, and there are 2 sets of twins. Bert and Nan, they're the older twins, and in the very first books of the series, they were 8 years old, and Freddie and Flossie, they were the younger twins who were 4 years old. Now, the first series, which was the longest running series by far, it ran from 1904 to 1979, and there were 72 books. Those were more episodic. It was just, kids having adventures, having fun, but they weren't really mysteries. I read them as a child. I liked them. I actually had some of the really older editions. I had some of the pre-World War I editions of some of the earlier book series. I don't know. I think I probably sold them or just got rid of them. They were. Hopefully I sold them. Hopefully I didn't just throw them away. But either way, they were okay. But they didn't really stick with me as a child. What really stuck with me were the mystery series. I've always liked mysteries, even as a kid. Like, I used to watch, the old Charlie Chan movies, the old Sherlock Holmes. And, with the Bobbsey twins, the mysteries really started with the second series in the 1980s, which was made by Wanderer. There were 14 books in that series, and they were for kids, I'd say, between 8 and 12, 8 and 14. It even said on the Wanderer books, a pre-Hardy Boys Nancy Drew book. So they were okay. I liked them a lot, actually. But those aren't the ones I'm going to start reviewing right now. Those, how am I going to put this? They were written in the 80s, but they still had the flavor of old times. Not 1904, but I'd say maybe the 60s. And I learned just a couple years ago, that some of those Wanderer books were actually the plots were taken from another series written in the 60s, so it makes sense why they have the flavor of the 60s. It was a series, I should have looked up the name of the series. It actually starred a black family. They were black twins, and it was the first, or one of the first, American book series which had black protagonist in it, and I'd have to find the name of that series now. But anyway, I didn't know that as a kid. I just liked the Bobbsey Twins series, and it was good. Now, in 1987, 1986, Wanderer lost the rights to write those books. They also lost the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, and Minstrel, which became Simon and Schuster. They acquired the rights to write the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, and the Bobbsey Twins. But with the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, they just continued with the number they left off. Whereas the Bobbsey Twins, they completely restarted the series, calling it the New Bobbsey Twins, and really brought them into the 1980s. These books, if you read them now, they may seem a little dated with the 80s references, but it was brand new and fresh then, especially because, again, the series started in 1904, and even the second series still had a 60s feel to it. Like, when I say 60s, I don't mean hippie, I mean, early 60s. So, this really put it into the 1980s, into a contemporary times for kids. And, I should mention, too, I mentioned how the age of the twins, that 8-year-old and 4-year-old thing really lasted to World War I. Then they became 12 and 6. And they became 12 and 6 until near the end of the new Bobbsey Twins series, where I think the kids turned 13 and 7. Anyway, I have a little summary here, so I'm going to use that. I'm not like Meg, who can just, I don't know, use a teleprompter. No, she doesn't use a teleprompter, but I'll have to use something that's visible. Anyway, though, so the book opens. Oh, I should mention too. So the even in the first book of the new Bobbsey Twins series, it's already kind of established that they solve mysteries, and you know how that works with even grown-up detectives. There is usually a policeman that sometimes they don't really like them solving mysteries. They want to solve their own mysteries, and they feel like they're being slighted. There are some policemen that tolerate it more than others. This particular series has a policeman named Lieutenant Pike, and he actually gets along pretty well with the Bobbsey Twins. He kind of teases them sometimes, but he usually just he's usually okay with them, especially because they don't do what a lot of detectives do, especially in the child range, where they do dangerous things and get themselves in potential trouble. The Bobbsey Twins don't typically do that. Anyway, so the book opens with the eldest girl, Nan Bobbsey, being helped with her makeup for a rock band she is in by her younger sister, Flossie. So she's in a rock band. She and Bert are in a punk rock band. I forgot about that. That doesn't really last. Well, I mean, that doesn't really last for most of the new Bobbsey Twins series, but it was a point here. They're going to be in a battle of the bands. Anyway, you know, this review probably has a lot more in the summary than I'm gonna do. But either way, they were going to be in a battle of the bands, and the Battle of the Bands basically happens at a park. That's why the book is called, I'm sorry, I should have said the title, The Secret of Jungle Park. So, which is kind of like an amusement park that's pretty well known in their town of Lakeport. So it's not like Disney World, it's just a smaller park. But either way, the Battle of Bands is going to be held at the main auditorium. So the town bully, Danny Rugg, is in a different band, and he's always kind of even in the 1904 version, he's always been a character in the Bobbsey Twins series. He's always kind of jealous of the Bobbsey Twins and tries to one-up them, and usually it doesn't work. Actually, it hardly ever works. So let's see. A local amusement park named Jungle Park is hosting a Battle of the Bands contest where the youth compete with their rock bands for a prize. The show hardly begins when what appears to be a fire disrupts the entertainment. That's correct. It's shown that the emergency was a prank, only a smoke bomb, but the police treat the matter seriously. Lieutenant Pike of the police force knows that it's no joke when a crowd is panicked, which is true. People can get seriously hurt in the chaos that could ensue. The Bobbseys ask him if they can investigate afterward, and he grudgingly agrees. After the police have done their thing, they can go and look for clues themselves. But of course, they make sure that the police get first choice, looking at the where the smoke bomb is on the auditorium. Well, of course, the contest goes on, and the Bobbsey band, the Aliens, tie for first place with Danny Rugg's band, the Skulls. Both will play again in an elimination heat at a later date. So the Bobbseys do their thing, search for clues, and they find an eye patch as well as a swizzle stick. Now, I didn't know what a swizzle stick is. That might be a U.S. term. It's just a bendable straw looking like a coffee stirrer, but it's a bendable straw, basically. So, you know, those straws you put in soda that can bend. The eye patch may point to Danny, since his costume has one. He was dressed as a pirate. But the Bobbseys know better than to assume anything without more definitive proof. And you'll find in this series, Danny Rugg is a bully, and he usually is the red herring in the stories. He typically is not the person who is the guilty party, because, of course, that would get old if he's the one doing everything. Oh, I should mention, too, there are some spoilers that are going to be mentioned in these books. They're mystery series, and I can't really talk about them without giving away the plot. So I would recommend reading the book first and then watching my review. These books they're not as valuable, but they're kind of rare because they haven't been printed in 35 years or more. So if you can't get a hold of them and you just want to hear the review, have at it. I also have, speaking of that too, I have the illustrations all scanned, as well as with the new Bobbsey Twins, I have the photos that were used to make the illustrations. Those are something you won't really see many places. So if you want to see them, you can comment below. I have them on my Flickr photo stream, which is also it's my work photo stream, which I'm a photographer. But those are separate. I can show you the photos and the illustrations if you wish. Anyway, so like I said, the eye patch pointed to Danny, but they wanted more proof. Still, the Bobbseys, especially the younger ones, think that with Danny's history, he's the likely prankster. Freddie has more confidence in the clue of the swizzle stick. It has a logo for the Sunset Grill on it. Fortunately for him, the Bobbseys have a tradition where once a week they go out to eat, and they alternate. They let each kid, weekly, a different kid will choose the restaurant that they go to. It happens to be Freddie's turn, so he chooses the Sunset Grill. Now, this place is a one-star dive, really disgusting food. The place is dirty and everything, and they don't like the food. But of course, Freddie went there just to find out about the swizzle stick and find out like what that has to do with the fire. So Freddie and Nan are able to sneak away. They go into a private hallway and they listen at the door where there is a deep-voiced man growling into a phone. The problem is Tiny. Now, of course, they don't really understand what that means, because if the problem is tiny and really small, why does he seem so mad? Their eavesdropping is cut short when they're discovered, but they use an old standby excuse that they're looking for the washroom, so Nan and Freddie take their leave and go back to the dining area. The next morning, the Bobbseys hear a report of strange accidents happening at Jungle Park. Simon Harris, who's the co-owner, who also owns the restaurants and real estate all over town, is interviewed. So, he owns restaurants and real estate all over town. Freddie recognizes him as the deep-voiced man of the Sunset Grill, so that was the owner of the Sunset Grill. And Nan and the younger twins go to investigate. When they get there, they find that Lieutenant Pike is also doing an investigation, and they sweet-talk him into joining him as he interviews some of the employees at Jungle Park. First, co-owner Mr. Loomis. He mentions that his partner, Mr. Harris, and he are upset that business is slow because of the accidents and strange happenings. Mr. Harris has even hired a fix-it man from his own pocket to save expenses. He's a redhead with an eye patch. Next, they speak to the animal trader, Beverly Baku. She's kind of she's a black woman and kind of a hippie. And I mentioned her race. I don't think they actually describe her that way in the book, but the books have illustrations, and she happens to be illustrated as a younger black woman who dresses kind of, well, I didn't even mention that she's kind of a hippie, but she's also dressed that way too. Oh no, she's always dressed that way, but she kind of acts that way. But yeah, so Lieutenant Pike here was interviewing her. So she kind of gets under Lieutenant Pike's skin. He's a little annoyed, but the twins can see that, and he just kind of pulls it off. She just basically is interested in her animals, and she didn't really want to be bothered, and that kind of annoyed Lieutenant Pike. So, Nan and Flossie decide their next move, and Freddie goes into action. He spotted the bald co-owner, Mr. Harris, and follows him. When the girls catch up, they spot the eye-patched, red-headed man. Not much happens, though, and the siblings go home to regroup. At home, they meet up with Bert, who is tailing Danny Rugg. Or, is it Danny Rugg? I think it's Danny Rugg. I always called him Danny Rugg as a kid, but I think it's Rugg. But anyway, they were tailing him, but Bert was tailing him, but didn't really find much. The older twins decide to search the park after hours, after it closed. Which, again, I know I said they don't really do much that was dangerous. That's probably not the wisest thing to do, to break into. They don't technically break in, but they trespass, as it were. They don't get far because someone had let the animals loose, and they almost get trampled by a stampeding elephant. So that was dangerous, but of course they had no idea that would happen. So shaken from their narrow escape, they beat a hasty retreat back home. The next day, the kids go to Jungle Park and rehearse with the rest of the aliens. After this, they break away to do more detecting. Now, Beverly Baku has left town. Seems a little suspicious, especially with what's going on. The twins talk to Mr. Loomis, and the eye-patched fix-it man comes into the office and is big and frightening, especially to the younger twins. Mr. Loomis gives the handyman instructions and he leaves. After this, he chats with the twins for a bit, mentioning, they all leave, I should say. I'm sorry, the handyman left. So then Mr. Loomis chats with the twins for a bit, mentioning such things as how ironic it is that a big man like him has a nickname called Tiny. So that might be the Tiny mentioned earlier. And he also offers to let them ride the roller coaster for free. So the roller coaster was fun, and they even see Mr. Eyepatch, who they thought was unfriendly, waving at them from the ground below. Actually, he's just staring at them, and they just think he's being friendly, but then terror strikes. During the rides, the cars come loose. Realizing something has gone wrong, Mr. Loomis is able to shut down the ride before the kids get hurt on the damaged roller coaster. When they recovered from their shock, the twins determined that the roller coaster was sabotaged. It was no accident. Since the handyman supposedly worked on the roller coaster, the twins and Mr. Loomis search for him. He was seen heading to the funhouse. So when they get there, what do they find? A red-headed wig and an eye patch. So he was wearing a disguise. Brainstorming back home, they realized that Mr. Harris was saying that Mr. Loomis, aka Tiny, was the problem on the phone, not the size of the issue. Next day, the twins follow Mr. Harris and see him talking to members of a construction company. Mr. Bobbsey owns a lumber yard, and he later explains that Peabody Construction wants to build a mall where the amusement park stands. The twins figure out that Mr. Harris wants to sell it, but Tiny won't agree. As co-owners, they both need to sign off on it, so the problem is Tiny. Nan sketches Mr. Harris and then adds a red wig and an eye patch. It's the handyman. So they're one and the same person. Now the twins call Lieutenant Pike, who lets them ride in the police car for the Final Showdown. Of course, this is a children's book. Real policemen would never do that. They find a man in a gorilla suit who blends in since the park has many people in costume. But wait, he's jimmying with the lights. They realize that one of the costumed people who work for the park wouldn't also be working on the equipment. Even though times are tough, that probably wouldn't make sense, especially because they can barely see out of the costumes. So after a funny chase, they capture the gorilla, who happens to be Mr. Harris or the red-headed handyman. So, the final bend competition? Despite a dirty trick that Danny Rugg tried to pull, the aliens win, and it's a nice wrap-up to the case. Now, yes, the plot seems pretty simplistic. Even from my description of it, I think it's pretty obvious who the villain was before the denouement of the book. But these were written for children, remember that. And a lot does happen. I realized I was talking for quite a while. These books are only 87 pages, and I'd say maybe there's 8 or 9, possibly 10 illustrations in them. So let's say 77 pages. And also, when the chapter ends, it could end at the beginning of a page, and then the next page starts in the middle where the next chapter starts. So really, maybe 70 pages. So quite a bit happens in these books, and I really enjoyed them as a child. As I said here, what can I say? I love these books as a tween. This one came out in 87, so I was around 11 or 12 years old, and they still have a place in my heart. Now, the Wanderer series came out in 1980, so I was 5 years old when that started, and I got to, I should mention, I know Meg even said I should mention some anecdotes of my childhood, so I'm going to talk about that now. I actually started reading the Bobbsey twins in 1980 with the second book in the Wanderer series. In the summer of 1980, my family and I went on vacation to Bermuda, and the second book in that series, they happened to go to Bermuda and solve a mystery. And so my brother bought it for me so I could read it on the plane. He read it to me on the plane, maybe, I don't remember. But either way, I really, really liked it. I started buying the rest of the series, and when the new Bobbsey twins came out, I kept buying them. So what are my thoughts of this book, this particular book? I really liked it. I think I mentioned before when I did my McQuirk mystery overview where I gave a brief summary of all of the books. I remember more the ones that the younger I was, the more I remember about. Well, that's not true with this, because the new Bobbsey twins have really stuck in my mind too, and I was older, a little bit older. But with the new Bobbsey twins series, one of the things too, not only was I getting older, the series kind of did a reverse progression, in my opinion. Now, it might be, I don't know the reasoning for it. Maybe they realized that they should go for an even younger audience. But the first 17 books in the series have a much different flavor than the last 13. There were 30 in all in the new Bobbsey Twins series. The first 17 involve real crimes, and they're not violent crimes. Nothing really scary or violent happens. I mean, there might be some scares for kids, but nothing too intense. But they were actual crimes, and it was a really good series. The last 13 books of the series, they're not real crimes. Hardly anyone goes to jail. It's like, I remember the one was like, the chocolate chip cookies they were baking was stolen. It was just, I mean, the recipe was stolen or something. They weren't as good. I guess, again, that they realized they wanted to cater to an even younger audience, and I was actually getting older. By that time, I guess it was around 1990s. I was already in my mid-teens, so they just weren't as good to me. I did collect the entire series until it ended in 1992. They came out every year a month, so six of them came out a year, and Yeah, that's about all I have to say for it. We're getting on the 20-minute mark now. But please leave a comment below if you have any questions or you like the series. I'm not going to go to the spiel of subscribing and giving a thumbs up. That's up to you, of course. But I really do hope that you like these series. They're kind of obscure books. None of them were like... Well, a few of them were more popular than others, but they're all fairly older. I think the new Bobbsey twins are probably the last series. Well, the McCork went to 1996, but most of them are from the 70s and 80s. So the Bobbsey twins, they're all from like the 80s or the 70s, basically. So we're talking 30 to 40 something years ago, and they're not still in print like the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. The series doesn't still go on. So really, they've kind of gone out of the public eye. People might have heard of the Bobbsey twins. They might have heard of Trixie Belden, but they don't really know much about them. They've never read the books. They don't really even know what the characters are like. So I don't know how much of a following I'm going to get with these books, but I'm just basically doing this because it's something I enjoy. The four books of the four series I plan on doing, they're going to be the Bobbsey twins, which I'm going to include the Wanderer and the new Bobbsey twins as one series. The McCork Organization series, which I've done a review of the entire series, so you know what those are about. The Three Investigators, that's a really good series, and many people today might not know who he is, but Alfred Hitchcock is kind of a character in the series. He didn't have anything to do with writing it, but he allowed them to use his name as a character. He's a famous movie director, and even in the books he is a movie director as well. So that might have some more of a following. And then the Trixie Belden series. Trixie's kind of a younger Nancy Drew, basically. She solves mysteries as well. That's not true, though. She's different than Nancy Drew. There's quite a few differences. I didn't like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys at all as a kid. My brother did. I didn't like any of them. They were kind of too repetitive for me, the same recycled plots. I did like the TV show, the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew from the 70s, and I liked the movies from the 30s. But I didn't really read the books. So those are the four series I'm going to be talking about. I don't know which one I'll do next. If you have an idea or you have a request that you want to me to do a certain one next, let me know. Now, I'm not going to do the books out of order. At least I don't think I'm going to. I'm going to start with number 1 of each one. But still, if you have a series you want me to do next, let me know. I plan on doing the next one next week. We'll see if that happens. But thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.